Penguin Random House Audio presents The Efficiency Paradox: What Big Data Can't Do by Edward Tenner. Read for you by Jason Culp. To the memory of William H. McNeill. Preface. The 7 Deadly Sins of Efficiency. Why it is still a work in progress. This book is a critique of something self-evidently desirable, even wonderful until it isn't: efficiency. And it's also about an apparent oxymoron that seems absurd until we realize that it's also been essential, inspired inefficiency. Efficiency is mostly good, but like all good things, can be carried too far. Even an excess of water can be lethal. More than 20 years ago, at the dawn of the web as we know it, when I wrote my first book on the unintended consequences of technology, Why Things Bite Back, published in 1996, the idea of efficiency itself as a threat hardly occurred to me. In fact, far from allying with the critics who called themselves neo-Luddites, a term now shared by their friends and foes, I was an early adopter and enthusiast. As a science book editor, recruiting authors globally and affiliated with a university offering email, I had already been using it to correspond and set up appointments. As a researcher already using electronic databases, I found the new web browser and graphic interface a welcome improvement. As a writer, always tinkering with my text, I had embraced word processing since the days of the TRS-80 in the early Reagan era. Remembering the tedium of retyping and the mess of carbon paper, I felt and feel no nostalgia for my own typewriting, though I do find that the typewritten letter has a distinctive graphic personality through the bite of letters in the paper and the varying impressions created by carbon ribbons from saturated to faint. I saw and wrote about the downside of new technology, the chronic back pain and carpal tunnel ailments resulting from the ever more sedentary office, and the comical fate of the paperless office. But I shared in much of the technological optimism of the later 1990s. The web at first appeared a godsend for newspapers and magazines. Whether or not electronic publication ever replaced print, their publishers reasoned, they held a priceless franchise in high-quality content that attracted an affluent readership coveted by advertisers. Technology itself was a profitable advertising focus into the early 21st century. I occasionally find the thick circuits section of the New York Times among my clippings, well sponsored by hardware and software publishers and electronics retailers. The efficiency of the electronic newsroom helped make all this possible. It seemed that society could have its cake and eat it too. Amazon appeared, but it could coexist with still profitable chains of giant bookstores. It was hard to imagine that Amazon threatened Borders and Barnes & Noble, as these had decimated independent bookstores in the 1980s with crushing scale and an earlier generation of technology. The rise of robotics did not seem to threaten employment levels. Old-line business magazines shared still thriving newsstands with technology-oriented newcomers like Wired and the Industry Standard. Technological utopian authors spread the gospel of individual empowerment while corporate elites made more money than ever. If the 1960s were the go-go years, the 1990s were the win-win decade, thanks to the efficiency of the web. Beginning around 2005, the new hyper-efficient world entered a different phase. With the introduction of the Apple iPhone in 2007, made possible by the rapid evolution of computer processing speed, electronic devices were gradually ceasing to be tools that people used and put away and becoming extensions of themselves and their personal and professional networks. At the same time, the exceptionally efficient search engine Google and the social networking site Facebook, together with Amazon, were transforming online commerce by adding a new level to the Internet, the platform between the corporate website and the open web. Since 2008, the dream of utopia through ever-increasing electronic efficiency has been dimmed. The recession that began that year had many origins, but was due in part to the technical ease with which bankers and securities industry professionals were able to manage risk. Meanwhile, the rate of increase of the number of transistors that can fit on a computer chip has been slowing down. It used to double every 18 months or so, a rhythm described since 1965 as Moore's Law, after Gordon Moore, a founder of the dominant chip manufacturer Intel, but since 2005 has been stretched to 2 to 3 years. Further, the success of new platforms in attracting advertisers and marketers has come at the expense of the revenue of newspapers and magazines. The all-time peak in advertising revenues did not occur until 10 years after the advent of the web in 2005, when it was $47.4 billion in print and $2 billion in digital. In 2014, these numbers were $16.4 billion and $3.5 billion, respectively. There were, of course, many winners as well as losers in the new hyper-efficient web, in which computer techniques, algorithms, were supplanting intuitive judgment. And there were benefits to web-savvy consumers from increased price competition. But for many economists, the hope was dimming that the benefits of more efficient production and distribution would lift the public's standard of living. Two noted economists, Tyler Cowen in The Great Stagnation, 2011, and Robert J. Gordon in The Rise and Fall of American Growth, 2016, even advanced the previously heretical idea that the 20th century had seen the last of an era of low-hanging fruit, transformative innovations that by today's standards were relatively cheap to develop. This is a sharp turn from the mood even at the beginning of the 2008 recession, when the computer scientist and futurist Ray Kurzweil repeated his prediction from 2000 that a computer with the hardware to emulate a human brain would be available for $1,000 by the year 2020. Not only some economists, but many citizens of Western countries have lost faith in the ability of industrial and academic elites to deliver the benefits of technological efficiency to either the middle class or the poor. Unless the trend reverses, politics around the world are likely to remain unsettled for years to come, no matter which parties hold power. So, it is time to consider whether too much efficiency is part of the problem. I will suggest that we need not abandon the idea of efficiency, but cultivate inefficient behavior that in the long run will make technology not only more effective, getting more done, but more efficient, doing it with fewer resources. First, we need a definition of efficiency. Economists use the term technically in a way that I could not follow here without making this a different book. I would define it as producing goods, providing services or information, or processing transactions with a minimum of waste. The word came into wide use in the 19th century, when scientists and engineers extended to human labor the physical idea of efficiency as useful work per unit of energy. Social scientists from the 1890s through the 1920s, in turn, expanded this sense to all inputs and outputs in society, and indeed to an ideal of social efficiency, the rational optimization of human welfare. Innocent as the phrase sounds today, at the turn of the century it was rooted as much in racism and xenophobia as in technological idealism. Its prophet, the sociologist Edward A. Ross, was forced to leave Stanford University for his anti-Asian pronouncements in 1900. In his book, Social Control, published the following year, He combined admiration for the rest.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?